Hello and welcome to Economy Markets TV, where we have conversations with a purpose. I'm your host, Dave Okenquist, the senior research analyst here at Dent. Joining me, as you can see, is the man himself, Mr. Harry Dent. Harry, great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, good to be here.
Good to be here to sort of talk about the events of the week and get into what you're seeing in the markets. And before we get into the markets, let's talk about some of those news events. One of them is the Iran situation. We went from being maybe on the brink of World War III to things calming down. But as you said before we started, things that maybe not being so quick to dismiss that sort of issues that's still going on in Iraq with regard to Iran.
Yeah, we put out an update on it right after it occurred. And I said, look, Iran's got two choices here. They already had a victory from Iraq moving to kick the U.S. out of Iraq. So that was a victory. So I was suggesting, why not just throw a soft punch and take your victory and run? And that's what they appear to do. All these big missiles, but they didn't hit anything. That was no accident. They didn't hit anything. But you do have to remember, scenario number two was things escalate. It's not just Iran's leadership. And that plane being shot down gave them some loss of credibility, which also made it hard for them to hit harder. But you got all these Hezbollah and other factions they support. Not only did Trump alienate Iraq more, he alienated the Iranian people who are not as far right and as anti-West and anti-U.S. as their leadership. They never have been. Anybody that travels there, the foodies always, Anthony Bourdain, these people always say that. So something could still come out of this. It's going to take another week or two to see if something else out of this. But that was the biggest threat to the market. And now we see the market today taking off because that threat seems to be gone. So that's the big positive of the week.
Excellent. Yes, hopefully we'll get, as you say, a little bit more clarity in that in the coming weeks. Of course, the other big items that happened this week, Harry, perhaps maybe the most newsworthy, but not really a surprise, which was that the House formally sent the impeachment articles to the Senate, and a trial may begin as early as next week. What is your take on that, either with regard to the markets or just in general?
Yeah, well, that was something Nancy Pelosi was doing to stall, because the longer this thing, is in the public view, the Republicans rather have a quick trial and get it over with. So, yeah. But she finally moved on, which is also a slightly positive thing in the impeachment thing, which really doesn't seem to matter that much unless he literally gets forced out of office. And that didn't even happen with Bill Clinton. So that's not a big news item, but that was a slight positive also.
Yep. Now, on the economic news front, we had two things with regard to trade. The president got the Senate to pass the USMCA, or essentially what you might call NAFTA 2.0, and as well signing the phase one of the trade agreement with China. So two things there in terms of trade, and that could have possibly a positive economic impact on the U.S. economy. What do you think about these two things getting formalized?
Yeah, these are both modest positives. NAFTA, I think, would have expected something like that. The China thing, China is never going to give in big time unless they have to, because they have here, and they have such a long-term strategy against this. But this phase one going through that's also a modest positive. But it's not a big step forward either. But again, one of the things that could have derailed the markets if China had stomped out of negotiations here and stomped off and left and said, hey, we're not talking anymore, that would have been a negative. So Iran's not a negative. The China trade talks are not a negative for now. Neither is impeachment particularly. So another reason the markets are marching up.
Yep, absolutely. So I know, Harry, you want to get into the markets, and I know everybody watching wants to get your take on the markets. Before that, also, I just want to lead you into something we've talked about last week and something you've certainly written about, which is the recent Fed action regarding repurchase agreements and also buying T-bills, what some are calling QE4, possibly. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how things have developed over the week in terms of the markets.
Well, we did do a big update on Wednesday on that. And by the way, we did have some erroneous information from the Wall Street Journal that we just fact-checked today when we got a new report. We had to wait on that. But it's the cumulative repos and T-bills is $425 billion in 4 months, about $106 billion a month. We were showing it could have been, by that report, the Wall Street Journal, as high as a 505. But it's still $106 billion a month. That's almost twice as much as the peak quantitative easing. And just recently, the Fed made a statement starting in February. They plan to buy 60 billion T-bills a month, 20 billion in bonds. So that's old-fashioned 80 billion of quantitative
Yeah.
easing, higher than ever, and 30 billion minimum repos, but it'll take what it takes. So that's 110 billion to maybe, if they do 230 billion repos, 140. This is still full bore, super stimulative QE in excuse for the repo thing, which was a crisis and the Fed kind of got forced into. So this is the biggest single thing by far going on in the stock market. This is the reason since late September, early October, on just a couple week lag to this repo thing, when people figured out, oh, they are going to keep injecting money and it's more stimulative. It's the market's been straight up, no corrections. And today, I mean, we've been telling people for many months, scenario one, this megaphone pattern, we break down first and then have a strong final run with stronger stimulus, or we just keep into this blow off rally and we break out. We broke out on Thursday. So Thursday afternoon, up 300 points, 100 of that was right at the end when you want to see it. Strong signs, a late day rally. That's a sign the smart money stepping in. So I think my best scenario right now is we go straight up, continue to go up at this trajectory into at least March, but probably I'd say mid-year, because with this repo thing and with the Fed, if the Fed says, well, we're going to start to taper off because this is getting crazy. And by the way, it is crazy. But the Fed is not tapering off because the financial system is telling them we need this liquidity or we get in trouble and these repo rates go up and everybody gets concerned. So they're kind of locked into this. I don't see why the market wouldn't be up into at least the favorable season of May. And Andy Pancholi, my co-author on Zero Hour in London, he's got the biggest turn point of this year, looks like around early June. So I'd see mid-year as a time where we could see the first peak. And I am telling you, we're going to be over 10,000 NASDAQ and maybe even closer to 11 if we get an overthrow there. So very bullish. But it's also setting up, along with a lot of IPOs expected to come on the market, which is basically bubbly and sets up a top by taking buying power from the real companies like Apple, the real tech stocks, the secondary stocks. So we really are setting up. I'm convinced we're setting up for a peak this year. Right now, I'd say the most likely peak is mid-year, around late May, early June. We see that first scary correction. Then we see a rebound with stimulus that wouldn't make a new high, but could allow Trump to still sneak in and get reelected, because that rebound past rebound. So again, we're out of the no more megaphone pattern. That scenario has been pretty much knocked out. We're in the final blow off. The question is, how long does it go? How high does it go? But I'd say right now, odds are it's going to go at least well into May, and at least 1,000 points or more, 10% or more higher on the NASDAQ, and probably more than that. So bullish for now. But again, if it gets that high, then we'll have to start worrying about hedging and protecting our assets. But right now, there are no signs. And again, we started off here saying geopolitically and politically short term, all the things that could have hurt the market here seem to have stepped back. So it looks up.
Absolutely. Harry, thank you so much for joining me and giving your take on the news and the markets. For all of you watching, we love to get your questions. Sometimes, like today, we don't always have time to get into them. But if you've got a question for Harry, you'd like to have him answer, send that to tv@economyandmarkets.com. For Harry Dent, I'm Dave Okenquist, and this has been Economy and Markets TV.